On behalf of the administration, faculty, staff, and students of the University of Houston, the Cullen College of Engineering, and especially the family of Dr. William A. Brookshire, I want to welcome you to campus as we gather to remember and celebrate the life of William Bill Brookshire, or Dr. B, as many in the room fondly called him. For those who I have not had the pleasure of meeting, my name is Russell Dunleavy, and I'm the Chief Development Officer at the University of Houston. I've had the pleasure of working with Bill over the last 7 years on his support of the Cullen College of Engineering at the University of Houston. Everyone here today has their own personal stories, memories, accomplishments directly related to Bill. And I know that today will serve as a way for all of us to look back on those memories, say thank you, and honor a man whose life had a tremendous impact on all of us. He was a man dearly loved by his 3 children, dearly loved by his 3 grandchildren. He came from simple beginnings. Bill worked his way through college and had a long, successful career. He believed that hard work and determination characterized him. He was a loving father and a loving grandfather. William Alfred Bill Brookshire, co-founder and longtime chairman of S&B Engineers and Constructors, died peacefully on the afternoon of Friday, April 21st, 2017, at his beloved home near Lufkin, his hometown. Bill graduated from Lufkin High School at the age of 16, where he played football and made lifelong friends. He attended Kilgore Junior College on a football scholarship, where he used to joke that he was definitely too small for football. Following his football days, he attended the University of Houston, where he attained his Bachelor of Science degree in Chemical Engineering in 1957. He completed his Master of Science and PhD in Chemical Engineering in 1960 at LSU, with the help of a fellowship from Humble Oil. His first job after college was at the Humble Oil plant in Baytown, Texas. In 1966, he moved to SIP, where he met James G. Slaughter, Sr. Together, they founded S&B in 1967. This year, in 2017, S&B is celebrating 50 years of a thriving business, an accomplishment that we all know he was extremely proud of. He was also very proud to call himself a chemical engineer from the University of Houston and from LSU. And both of his alma maters recognized his tremendous accomplishments. In 1989, he was recognized as a Cullen College of Engineering Distinguished Engineering Alumnus. In 2012, he was inducted into the LSU College of Engineering's Hall of Distinction. And in 2016, he was named as a University of Houston Distinguished Alumni. Bill was also inducted into the Cullen College of Engineering Bridge Builder Society, which is the highest honor bestowed upon a donor by the Cullen College. His later years were filled with great satisfaction when he created the William A. Brookshire Foundation. The primary purpose is to provide scholarships for children of S&B employees and engineering students that are also working to support themselves, just like he did. He ensured that the foundation will live beyond him to continue its supports for students. He often retold the stories and accomplishments of his scholarship recipients that he got to know through annual visits to the schools and their personal thank you letters that they would write to him. Anyone who knew him would say Bill's happiest days were spent in the woods, hunting, fishing. He enjoyed skeet shooting, photography, watching college football, especially UH Cougars and LSU, but I know for a fact it was more LSU. He loved hosting people at his home in East Texas, where he proved to be a master cook. In his mind, a perfect day was spent with friends or family, a fire in the fireplace, a dry martini, and a good cigar. Bill was an avid, lifelong learner and truly believed in the power of education. At this time, I'd like to introduce Lori Garrison, the oldest child of Dr. Brookshire.
Thank you all for being here. In a strange way, it's great to see you and hear all the stories. I wish I could retell them all. These last few weeks, since April 21st, Dad's been on my mind and many of us that are close to him pretty much nonstop. But really, it's been over the last few years that we've worried about him, and we've been thinking about him as he slowed down. And yet, it still, to me, seems unbelievable that he's not here. So trying to make sense of that, I came to realize that the people we're close to, we see their aged skin and we see them slow down, but then we also see all of our decades of experience with them. And so we don't see them as that old person who's slowing down. We see them as that vibrant young person who went on adventures with Jimmy and did, was in the woods and was shooting and was making deals. And that's who we see. And so that's why it just seemed like he'd go on forever. But he was my dad, first and foremost, to me. And he was the biggest, baddest bear in the woods. He could see wild game at a distance before anyone else. He could chop the most wood. He could cook up the best meal for as many people as showed up. He could drive a Jeep practically up a tree. And he regularly drove Jeeps across creeks on boards. And I was always scared, and I just came to know that he'd always take care of me. When he decided to do something, oops, am I too close? When he decided to do something, he just put his whole heart into it. When he raised fruit trees, they covered his property in Lake Livingston. When you raised a garden, it was over an acre. And he was resilient. On a small scale, my son tells the story when they were fishing in the Natchez River, and a limb just fell out of the tree, hit Dad right on the head. And Connor said, I thought he was going to knock out. And he said he just picked it up and put the branch to the side and said, well, that's never happened before, and just kept on fishing. My late mother told the story about when they were in graduate school in Baton Rouge. Dad wrecked his car, ended up in the levee. He hitchhiked home and got her car, just went back fishing. So he's been bitten by snakes, just took a nap afterwards, and clearly that worked out for him. And you'll see a picture in the back. He and some friends were hunting in Mexico and got bad gas. When they came back over the border, the plane stopped. They put it down on the side of the road. They all jumped out. Chrissy says he grabbed his camera back, and the plane went up in flames. And he called me and said, you're lucky to have a daddy. And I was like, yeah, I am. I really am. So he just seemed unstoppable. So I got to thinking this week, how did he get that way? He didn't start out with the advantages that many people have, and certainly that he gave his own children. His parents weren't particularly reliable, so he's raised mostly by his grandparents, and they didn't have very much. None of them had a car, so he didn't learn to drive right away. But he did have freedoms that kids today mostly cannot imagine. If he could figure out how to do something, if he wanted to do something, he could do it. And what he wanted to do, as many of you know, was hunt and fish. So he'd hitchhike to the river, camp on the banks, and make friends with those that like to do the same. And so stepping back, I think that's where his character was built, where he learned to solve problems, value people for their integrity and their skills above all else, and to have a single-minded focus. And that's where he became his self-made man. And as many of you know, that competence and focus could make him rather intense sometimes. But he also had a real center of happiness and a sense of humor and a full-bodied joy And when he'd share that side of him, you would just feel blessed when you got to see that smile. We all played to see that smile. Brian Pipes tells a funny story. I talked to him the week after Dad passed. He said Dad would walk down the hall, and if he caught you, he might give you a quiz on a project or an engineering concept. And I was like, wow, I thought that was only at home. But if you passed, you got that big smile and his hearty laugh. Donna and Brooke will attest to the fact that he never forgot his roots of watching money, and he wouldn't even eat LeSueur peas unless they were on sale, and you couldn't bring him anything, not a can of tomatoes, and not know the price, because he would ask, he'd know the going rate, and you'd hear about it if you didn't get it on sale. So we all, living with Dad, we all learned to be prepared. And one of the biggest things I remember was the lesson I learned very young was you never did anything without having considered what you were doing. Because you couldn't just give the lame answer to why did you do something that you wouldn't want to say, I don't know. It just seems stupid. And I think that really informed a lot of my life, being thoughtful in my behavior. Brooke, Chrissy, and I each had different relationships with Dad due to our ages and where we lived and worked. But the one commonality was that Dad was either at work or in the woods. And so if we wanted to be with Dad, we were at work or in the woods. And so he passed on not only the practical skills of those things, but the subtle skills of being quiet in yourself and reading the signs, and reading, if you've been in the boat with Dad, the hand signals. And it turns out that like driving a boat on a narrow, muddy, tree-filled river is a delicate task, and a lot of those skills translate to what we needed in our life. If you got to go hunting with Dad, you had to follow him exactly, and that meant mimicking his behavior, stepping where he stepped, so you didn't make a distraction or make a noise. And in thinking about it this week, I thought, we all learned to pattern ourselves after a successful person that preceded us. So we had a lot of really good life lessons from our dad. And my friend Laura and I both had great, complicated dads, and we often say, he may not have been the perfect dad, but he was the perfect dad for me. And he continued to be a teacher of sorts as he grew older. So as Russell said, he started the scholarship program to reward hard work, first for the people that he worked with, and then for the people at various schools. He was immensely proud of his students, and he loved to hear your stories, and he would retell them. And so many of your stories had a lot of common elements with his own. So the saying goes, a good life leaves behind seeds that keep growing. Well, Dad had a really good life. And he often bragged about how he avoided living on the edge. So he didn't really have to manage the details. He said, and I think a lot of the U of H people have heard this quote, I never balanced a checkbook, I never bounced a check, and never paid a dime of interest on a credit card. He was a self-made man for sure. But the reality is that none of us really are self-made. In addition to our family, he had the support of his longtime business partners, the Slaughter family. And he also had two very important guardian angels, Mrs. Renfro and Donna Green. They have seen Dad and our family through many adventures and misadventures. And many of you might not know, though, that Dad was a bachelor for the last 30 years of his life. And most of that, his neighbor Alvern Stanley helped him manage things in Pasadena, and his childhood friend Jim Sharp helped him manage things at the river. And for many years, Dad has worked Monday through Wednesday in Houston and gone to the river the rest of the week. And his good buddies would visit on the weekends, and he loved that. He helped countless people in his life, in big ways, in small ways. Many of you in this room he helped, and many of you in this room helped him. You added color to his life. He was friends with his coworkers, his clients, his neighbors, his friends at university. And as he began to decline, the S&B Underground swung into action. Donna and Carolyn, Lynette and Barbara made sure he got wherever he needed to go. And Carolyn's special brand of frankness got him to finally allow a few of us to help him a little bit. Joseph Niles drove him to Baton Rouge every year so he could go to LSU luncheons, or dinners, I'm sorry. He and Donna probably know the words to every song on Willie's Roadhouse. At home, Mary and Anita watched over him and took such dear care of him. And after many years of trying to get his agreement, Oscar Garza and Steve Harrison made his house more functional. This last year, Gary Wright, his good hunting buddy, came to stay with him for several weeks. And he loved it. He loved it, and finally would go out to dinner some. And at the river, Haruko and Tim, you made sure everything was taken care of, and you watched over him so well. And we can't thank you enough. And finally, there are just not enough thank yous in the world to express our appreciation for our very longtime friends, Dylan Sharp and Ray Baldwin. You were there for us when we really needed you most. So it really did. It took a village to make a self-made man. And we thank you all.
At this time, I would like to ask Wally Maurer to come up to the stage. Wally is a longtime S&B employee of 27 years and a personal friend to Dr. Brookshire.
I could really probably come up. It's coming down that I'd have the problem. Well, I'm here to talk about the early days. Can y'all hear me okay? Is this okay? Give a yell if I get sidetracked. The early days, of course, started with Jim Slaughter and Bill Brookshire and their partnership. Jim called me up in St. Louis in June of '68 and told me about it and said he was wanting to start a construction company, and he would like for me to come down and be the manager of the engineering company. And that's where it started. I talked it over with my wife, and of course she liked Jim Slaughter. Every woman likes Jim Slaughter, you know. I never met anyone that didn't. But I'd known Jim a long time, and he was true blue. And I'd met Bill at SIP, and I came down and talked with him, and I came up with a conclusion. We were talking about management philosophy, engineering philosophy, and I remember what they said. Jim Slaughter came up with a credo that was our guiding light. Let's never do anything we'd be ashamed of. And Bill answered right away. He says, and when in doubt, we'll take the high ground. And that, I think, was the real key. They were men of character and men of integrity. And so there was never any real bad problems at the top. They respected each other. They liked each other. They had a great sense of humor. They used to keep me in stitches when they were just kidding. But the day I started was the 3rd of August of 1968, and at that same day, Bill and Jim had hired Janelle Renfro, so we started the same day. We also ended up retiring the same day. But Judy was the secretary there of Jim Slaughter, and she orientated Mrs. Renfro, so she picked up the ball pretty quickly. And she was a she was a valuable person there because she probably put together the greatest collection of secretaries in the world. You know, managing women is tough duty, and and she absolutely appreciated her girls into greatness. We had the best dispositioned secretaries in the world, and I worked with some pretty tough ones at other places, so it's no easy feat. But she was a jewel, and I guess we got our first big job was with Exxon. It was due to Bill's expertise at material handling, particularly polyethylene pellets. They were kind of a new phenomena that we hadn't studied in school. But that's when I really got to know Bill, because Exxon stipulated that Bill would be the process engineer and I would be the project manager. And I got to really know, and that's when my admiration started, because he was a crackerjack process engineer. Process engineers are usually the bottleneck on projects. You know, they have to get the flow sheets done and the front end work done. So I used to spend lots of my time getting process engineers to finish their darn work. With Brookshire, that wasn't a problem. He took it as a challenge to stay ahead, and he did. He was one of the most work-wise process engineers that ever lived, and it's a damn shame he had to leave process engineering and become a manager of a big company. What a waste. But one of the stipulations, they asked us if we could do the, I got to tell you this story. They asked us if we could do the purchasing. I said, no sweat, because all purchasing does, you know, is type up the requisitions engineers write, and I figured anybody could do that. Well, we didn't have anybody. Mrs. Renfro was busy, and Dot Storage was busy with accounting, and Gene Reeves was out for the summer, I think. So Mrs. Renfro hired a kid by the name of Donna Green. She bought her, I think it was a typewriter with magnetic cords, and bingo, we had a purchasing department. And I also learned that there's a lot more to purchasing than I thought. You know, there's lots of details on it. And finally, Jack Morgan rescued me. He was our design coordinator, and he had more attention for details. So between he and Donna, well, they performed the purchasing department. It took us only 11 tries to get the first one approved by Exxon. I think they were jealous of our creativity. They wanted it done their way. And their way was, you know, just reading one of their purchase orders was a task. But at any rate, we prevailed. It was sort of like the Clear Creek Wildcats beat the Dallas Cowboys. And one of the great things that came out of that is we were joint venturing with Fluor. Fluor was doing the front end of the work, and we were doing the finishing end, and they wanted our engineering procedures to be compatible. Well, we developed our engineering procedures with the help of the Exxon. We had a great Exxon team for this. Kim O'Hara was the project manager, and Charlie Mooney was his project engineer, and Alex Riddick was his electrical engineer. A real good-looking guy. And he had a crush on Donna, I think. But she was the most non-flirting girl in the world. So anyway, it was a good attraction. But Bill and I ended up with a 27-year relationship. And I think there were two reasons probably. The number one reason was we could trust each other. And I guess the second reason was I never got mixed up on who was Big Banana. If it got down to the wire, he won. Bill had a great sense of humor. Jim Slaughter also had a great sense of humor. And if you don't believe me, Jimmy inherited that. If you're ever around him sometime, he's got the same sense of humor. But I remember one day I asked Bill, how'd you come to be an engineer? And boy, he said, what did he say? He said, my daddy was a pipe fitter, and he told me, he says, why don't you be an engineer? They just stand around and do nothing. He said, that sounded pretty good to me. And then when I asked him, well, how'd you come to be a chemical engineer? And he said, well, when I went up to register at the U of H, the line was the shortest. And generally, if any complaints beyond his control, he'd say, Wally, I didn't invent the world, I just tried to live in it. But I remember one time I went in and he gave me the classic. We had a client when it had a really unreasonable request, and I went in to complain to Bill about this. And he just looked at me and he says, Wally, he says, we're batting 0-0-0 at convincing the client he's a fool. And you know, I remembered that advice because clients weren't only important to us, they were vital. They were our lifeblood. Without clients, you know, we would have a problem. So I wish our clients could know how hard we tried to please them, because you know, the incentive was, of course, we wanted their next job. And the way you do that is you try to leave a pleased client. And so we would do anything reasonable. We'd sign any kind of damn contract, no matter what kind of a indemnification clause, because we didn't have anything to lose. We were at their mercy. And that's lots better than long contracts. Just say, we'll do everything we know within reason to please you. And it's good enough. But they wanted more. But we had some great adventures. We had great people. Having the great secretaries, we got the smartest engineers. It was always wonderful to be surrounded by the intelligence I had at SB. That's what I miss most about retiring is that intelligence I had around me. You could get one Christmas I wanted to buy a guitar for my wife. She'd learned how to play a guitar. You know what? We had a chemical engineer by the name of Hugh Gallagher who had worked for 2 years with his father on buildings guitars. So he knew structure and he knew quality. And then we found a structural designer that played a guitar in a band, and he considered himself a top-notch judge of quality. So I took those two guys shopping with me, and we bought a guitar made by the Martin Company, which is supposed to be one of the best, but it didn't have the name Martin, but they recognized it. And so we got a really good bargain, got a good guitar, and that's the way it was at S&B. You could always find somebody who knew the answer to anything you looked for. And they knew the difference between what they knew and what they didn't know, which is the vital thing for an engineer. He needs to know the difference. And Bill had good common sense. I was just thinking about that. What made him what he was? I think his time on the river and the people he associated with. I was just telling Bob McKinley this morning, I think he had a PhD also in being a naturalist. He was the kind of hunter and fisherman that the planet needs. He had great respect for it, and he took care of it. And he was something else. I consider him and Jim Slaughter to be the two most significant men in my life. I'm glad they were around when they needed me. And it's been a great ride. And I thank you for letting me say a few words for Bill. I think he'd probably turn over in his grave as he knew I was up here. Okay, if somebody will help me down the steps.
Next, I'd like to ask J.D. Slaughter, the third generation of the Slaughters, the S and S&B, to speak.
It's hard to follow Wally Meyer, but I'll try. Thank you for asking me to speak. I appreciate it. On behalf of the Slaughter family. Yeah, the industry has lost a great man, and he'll be missed. But for us, we've lost a patriarch, a tremendous partner, and a mentor. His legacy is a great group of companies where he laid a firm foundation for growth, a great family, and a generous foundation. His focus on honesty, integrity, and ethical operation, along with our family, has set our culture and has made decision-making really easy. His focus, there was no hesitance to walk away from an opportunity if he felt it could not be done well, safely, and with integrity. And we're looking forward to continuing that. As my father, Jimmy Slaughter, recently reflected, he worked underneath Dr. Brookshire from the earliest beginnings of the company to working alongside him for the better part of 50 years. He said Dr. Brookshire was more than a partner for him. He was a mentor, whether it was in process design or skinning catfish. Once, close to 20 years ago, we got in a dispute with a billionaire businessman. And even though we won the legal process, he flew down in his private jet with the idea he would lower his award. He sat down with his entourage, and they exchanged pleasantries. And then Dr. Brookshire turned to my father and said, "You got this?" And my father said, "Yep." And then Dr. Brookshire said something effective, "I need to go check my email." And, much to the astonishment of their important guest. In their mind, things would be handled East Texas way, not the private jet way. He had sicked his pit bull on him, and there was nothing left for him there to do. In recent years, Dr. Brookshire and my father introduced a significant shareholder program and a bonus system to reward the people that make our company successful. These actions really relegated them to director-level decision-making and not day-to-day. However, they were very, very aggressive at the director level, having board meetings every Monday. Now, they just happened to be at Luby's or Loma Linda's, and they would talk about hunting, fishing, and football, and never really talking business. But their relationship was that important. And the company has seen tremendous growth and success due to that close relationship. My first real interaction with Dr. Brookshire was actually at the Old Boar's Den. I shot my first deer in his deer blind with him. And he would go out and teach me how to squirrel hunt by shooting 10, and I'd come back maybe with one, leaving a couple wounded out there. But the past several years, I would run into Dr. Brookshire in the back of Building A, and he would be making coffee. And he'd always be quick to quip, "This is the most important thing I'll do all day." Which we all know is not true. But it's really now up to us to make sure the coffee pots are full. And so on behalf of the Slaughter family, we want to offer our sincerest condolences to the Brookshire family, our longtime partner and friends. Thank you.
Next, I'd like to ask Brooke Brookshire, son of Dr. B, who spent his entire career with S&B, to say a few words.
Thank y'all. First, I'd like to thank everyone for the outpouring of sympathy and support. I cannot possibly express our gratitude from my family for everything. I was in an unusual position and blessed. I saw my father virtually every day of my adult life because I not only had a personal but a professional relationship with him. He was many things: a father, a mentor, a boss, a friend, and, as many of you know, sometimes a very harsh taskmaster. He held me and everyone close to him to the highest standard. I was the better for it, and so was the company. Of course, that he built with the Slaughter family. And many of y'all don't know, my father frequently handed out compliments. It was never to your face. He would tell someone he thought would convey it to you. I never understood why. He never said. But your accomplishments did not go unnoticed by him. He did notice. Many years ago, Wally Maurer, I guess I can say it, Dad was having a difficult time. He was getting divorced from his second wife. Wally may not remember this, and Wally encouraged me to move in with my father because my father was lonely. And I moved in with him for a year. We lived together like a couple of bachelors, except for one thing. He was still my boss. If I left the house in the morning, didn't matter what time he would get there, and his expectation was that I'd be 1 minute late to work. He would call my boss, Charlie Christie, and let him know that I needed to hear about it. It wouldn't have mattered if I'd gotten home from the office at midnight the night before. You were in time to work. You've heard about my father a lot. He had a lot of simple wisdoms. Many of them were learned from his grandfather, James William Lawless. He was a barber in Lufkin. Dad named me after him, and I subsequently named my son after him. One of those many of you have heard, bailing a leaky boat, in reference to our quality program. Got to keep it going. His famous 3 rules. Bad news does not have a shelf life. Don't put lipstick on a pig. And don't call him on Friday that there's nothing he could do about it till Monday. You found out when Friday started by calling Donna to find out if Dad had left for the river. So the last number of years, Friday generally started late Wednesday or early Thursday. But that was one of the things all of us knew. I'm certain Charles Reed's heard them. Tommy Collins has heard them. But those are just a few. Our time together at the place on the Neches River was the most precious. He relaxed, turned off the hustle of the real world. He often told me, I live at the river. I work at Houston. We would talk about anything from Dr. Pohl's, the Animal Planet show, to how to tie knots, and sometimes business. I learned many important things, like how to run a trot line or a hook net when they were still legal, and skin a catfish, a squirrel, a hog, or a deer. Picking ducks fell to me because, as Ray Baldwin knows, Dad deplored cleaning ducks. Many of the lessons came in a 12-foot John boat with a 9.8 Mercury motor. My father and I affectionately would refer to it as the executive conference room. Unlike Luby's or Piccadilly or Loma Linda, which was the boardroom. And I learned many things there. You can't fight the market. Wally, the client, there's only one boat and the client gets it. Their perception is our reality. So we did have a lot of conversation about business. Just in closing, Dad will be remembered by all of us. He had an impact on all of us. The one thing he'd ask all of us to do, the right thing. Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to ask Kate DeYoung to come up. I'm going to make a brief introduction of Kate. Kate is a graduate student at the Moores School of Music here at the University of Houston. She is pursuing a master's degree in vocal performance, and she's going to graduate in 2018.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I am found. Was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear, the hour I first believed.
It's a large group. We were talking in the back earlier about it's amazing to have so many people come to pay their respects and honor Bill. And I want to say thank you to Lori for asking me to say a few words today. I'm honored, and I'm actually humbled by the request. I had the pleasure of first meeting Dr. B in 2010. And I got to tell you about the first phone conversation we had. So I was in my office and my phone rang, and on the other end of the line was a female voice, and she said, "I'm calling to find out about scholarships at the University of Houston." And I said, "Okay." So she had a series of questions. We talked about scholarships, how they're awarded. We talked about how they're managed. And she said, "Okay, well, thank you." And before I could get into a deeper conversation, the conversation ended. And about 10 minutes later, my phone rang again. I picked up the phone, and I hear, "This is Bill Brookshire." And I said, "Well, Bill, how are you doing?" And he said, "Did you just get a phone call from somebody about scholarships?" I said, "Yes, sir, I did." He goes, "Well, good. I had somebody call you to make sure that I wasn't going to be talking to somebody that didn't know what the hell they were doing." And so began my relationship with Dr. Brookshire. So we had a phone conversation, and he said, "Why don't you come over to my office," which was 6 miles away from campus. So sat in his office and talked about the student body at the Cullen College of Engineering, talked about scholarships. It was also around the same time he told me that he was talking to LSU about his desire to establish scholarships for engineering students who were working their way through school. As you heard today, he believed in education. He believed in learning. He believed that you should never stop learning. Most of all, he believed that hard work, clear goals, and time management were keys to success in life. I considered Dr. B a friend. I considered him someone I admired as a businessman, as a philanthropist, and as a family man. He spoke fondly of his children, and he spoke very fondly of his grandchildren. He was proud of the company that he and many others around him worked so hard to build. He used to tell me that if he hires the right people and he lets them do their job, it's good for the company and it's good for him. He also used to joke that there were offices all over around the world that he had never been to, and he was proud of that. So he had several lunch spots, as many of you have learned today. One of his favorites was George's Italian, which is just down the street from the offices. It was here that we would discuss his support of the University of Houston, LSU, Lufkin High School, San Jacinto Community College, and Lone Star Community College. It didn't matter where we had lunch. There was always somebody there that knew Dr. Brookshire. There was always someone there that wanted to shake his hand, that wanted to share a story, reflect on the relationship that they had. Over the last 7 years, he has changed the lives of over 1,000 students at the colleges and universities that I mentioned earlier, providing scholarship support for students who are working and attending school. His scholarships at U of H and LSU are awarded to engineering students who work in order to be able to pay for their education. I recall very clearly the first Brookshire Scholarship lunch that we had at the Cullen College of Engineering. Each student would stand up and they would speak to Dr. B, and they would basically tell him the impact of the scholarship that they were receiving. I remember one young man stood up and he spoke about his life as a father, his role as a husband, his role at his job where he would work 30 to 40 hours a week. He spoke about what it was like being a full-time engineering student and what it was like to try to be successful in all of those areas while managing a financial burden of a college education. He told Dr. B that because of the scholarship, he would not be cutting back on his employment hours because he still needed that income to take care of his kids and his wife. He spoke about what it felt like to have someone invest in him the way that Dr. B did. He spoke about the motivation it gave him to take an additional course so he could finish his degree sooner, to pursue his dream of being a professional engineer. But the last thing he spoke about was how his wife had stopped her pursuit of a college degree to take care of the family while he went to school full time. He told Dr. B that because of his scholarship that covered his full tuition for his last 2 years at the University of Houston, his wife would now be able to go back to school once he completed his degree. And I clearly remember after he sat down, Dr. B leaned over at me and he had this grin on his face. And it was just the biggest grin. And he looked at me and he said, "That's the greatest return on investment anybody can ever have." Beyond the scholarships, Dr. B established emergency fund scholarships in engineering at U of H and LSU to financially help students who experience an unforeseen event that severely impedes their ability to continue their education. Examples of those assisted by this fund include students suffering from medical emergencies, transportation issues, being a victim of violent crime, or loss of employment. The last thing he wanted was a hardworking student be forced to stop going to school because of money. He also established the William A. Brookshire Graduate Assistantship in Chemical Engineering at LSU, and he's provided support for many capital projects. Dr. B believed in teaching, and that oftentimes in large research institutions, those who teach are often overlooked. He wanted to create an award to honor those working hard in the classroom, teaching engineering courses. At both LSU College of Engineering and the UH Cullen College of Engineering, he created the William A. Brookshire Teaching Excellence Award. This award is bestowed upon faculty members who demonstrate an unwavering commitment to exemplifying the highest levels of teaching inside the classroom. I don't think words or descriptions of all of the scholarship support or teaching excellence awards or graduate assistantships really do justice in describing his impact or the joy that we saw when he met his students. It was, I think, one of his greatest joys was being able to travel to Baton Rouge to meet with those students and to come the 6 miles over to the University of Houston to meet with the students. He was invested in their lives. He truly believed that these students were going to be successful. He would often tell them at the lunches that even without his scholarship support, he truly believed they would have somehow found a way to get the job done. But he was always proud to be a part of their journey. I saw the number of scholarships being awarded grow every single year as he would always challenge us to get more students. Every year, I want more students. Every lunch, I want more students. And he always said, don't worry about the money. Get me more students. And we would. He always believed that it was the best way that he could use his money. And he used to say, I can't think of anything else I'd rather do than invest in education and change the lives, which we know he did. It never failed. At every scholarship lunch, emotions would get the best of one or two of the students. And the student would tell their story, and the student would begin to cry. And you would look across the room at Dr. Brookshire, and he was fighting it, but he'd have to wipe those tears away from his face. And it wasn't just in front of the students. I witnessed it at lunch, in his office. It didn't matter the setting. He would get choked up when he was talking about these scholarship students. They meant that much to him. He truly believed in the scholarship support, and he believed in these students. So just think about it for a minute. Over 1,000 students. We can't even fit 1,000 students in this room. And that's just at the University of Houston, and that's just at LSU. And that's just in 7 years. So imagine what's going to happen 20 years from now when we're talking about 2,000 students and 3,000 students that have been impacted by Dr. William A. Brookshire. These students are going to finish their degrees. They're going to go out into the world. They're going to have jobs, start families. They're going to be problem solvers, thinkers, be amazing engineers, or excel in whatever field they choose to pursue. But most of all, they will be grateful. They will be grateful to Dr. Brookshire for providing the resource they needed in order to achieve their goals and accomplish their dreams. They will remember his kindness, his compassion, and his belief that nothing in life is handed to you, and that you have to work hard to earn it. I'll miss my friend. I'll miss our conversations about higher education and things he believed were working and things that he didn't like at all. I'll miss our conversations about University of Houston football and LSU football. Let me repeat again, LSU football. I'll miss our time discussing different ways to tenderize game meat, particularly squirrel. True story, we had lunch with the executive chef of University of Houston just so he could talk to the executive chef about tenderizing squirrel meat. Imagine that email I sent to the executive chef. He's created a legacy at the University of Houston. He's created a legacy at LSU. His name, his spirit of kindness will live on forever. For that, I know that the University of Houston and I know LSU will be forever grateful. You've heard from several people today about the impact that he had on their lives. So I ask you to turn your attention to the large screens for a video message from several of the scholarship recipients.
To the Brookshire family, I want to express my sincerest condolences for the passing of Dr. Brookshire. Although my interaction with him was brief, the scholarship that I received for one semester here at LSU has greatly impacted my education, and it has given me the motivation to keep working and keep studying until I finish my mechanical engineering degree in 2019. He has definitely been a great blessing in my life, and I am so sorry to hear that he passed. But my prayers are with you, and thank you so much for all your family has done.
As an out-of-state student here at LSU, the out-of-state tuition can be a huge financial burden on myself and my family, so the offer helped by Dr. Brookshire's scholarship has been a huge assistance to me. I've received the scholarship about 5 or 6 semesters in a row now, and thanks to that support, I'm proud to say that I'll be graduating in May with no college debt and with all my loans paid off. So thank you to Dr. Brookshire, and you will be missed.
To the family of Dr. Brookshire, I'm Kelsey Bankston, and I've received the scholarship twice now. The scholarship helped bridge the gap with chops being cut in the state of Louisiana, and my family and I didn't have to take out student loans to afford my tuition. Working and going to school is extremely difficult sometimes, so being rewarded for that with this scholarship is really encouraging and helpful. From the bottom of my heart, I would like to offer my condolences to your family. Losing family members is extremely tough, and I'll be praying for you all.
My name is Mijan Klein. I am a third-year Brookshire Scholarship recipient, and I will be graduating in the spring because of Mr. Brookshire. When we met 2 years ago, my family was homeless. We used to sneak back on campus after hours just so we could have a place to sleep. I was feeding my family off of a meal plan, so I had a $1,000 debt at the university. Dr. Brookshire paid my debt at the university and told me that he wanted me back in this program. He believed in me in one of the darkest times of my life, and because of that, I was able to believe in myself. If I go on to do awesome things, if my family has a great life because of everything I accomplished here, none of that would have happened if it wasn't for him. He knew my face, he knew my name, he knew my story before we ever even met, and even though I only saw him once or twice a year, he was my friend. And because of that, I will never forget him.
After receiving the news of being awarded the Brookshire Scholarship for the first time, I knew I had to meet this incredible man. Helping Mr. Brookshire walk from his seat to the front for group pictures had me starstruck. That man means a lot to me. I'm happy to say with credibility that Mr. Brookshire is a great man. He possesses a multitude of qualities that I admire. After meeting him, I quickly realized that he is a humble man. He shows high appreciation for hard work. That's because he understands the potentials and impacts that one can have by persevering and showing hard work. That's my type of guy. Dr. Brookshire, countless individuals will forever admire you, and they will miss you. I am honored and undoubtedly grateful to not only be a recipient of your scholarship, but to have witnessed a man of such power, caliber, and clout be able to remain so humble, hardworking, and optimistic. And as for me, Michael Jackson, I'm one of the ones who will truly miss you. You lived a life of service, and I sure will too, Dr. Brookshire. We love you.
Dr. Brookshire, thank you for your vision and wisdom as the co-founder of this great company, S&B. We in Plant Services appreciated your support and leadership. It was an honor and a privilege to be part of your team. We will continue to work hard, work with integrity, and strive for excellence in every aspect of our business and personal lives. Thank you, Dr. B.
I'm Kirk Weidman. I'm the manager of this equipment department at Hanson Road, and I would like to start by giving my condolences to the Brookshire family for passing of a great man, Dr. B, and Mr. Slaughter Sr. for starting an incredible company here, and Dr. B has left behind an amazing legacy.
My name is Dr. Philip Scott. I received scholarships through the Brookshire Foundation during undergraduate school and during medical school, which significantly decreased the burden of my student loans. And I'm currently a pediatric hospitalist in Fort Worth, and I take care of hospitalized children. So thank you, Dr. B, for allowing me to realize my dreams of becoming a physician. Thank you.
Well, he would have scoffed at technology anyway, right? We'll get that video and we'll get it posted to some websites so everybody can hear what everyone had to say. So to Lori, Brooke, and Chrissy, thank you for sharing your dad with all of us. Thank you to all the employees of S&B for sharing Dr. B with us. So on behalf of the family, I want to thank everyone for attending today, and I want to invite you to remain in the room and visit with each other, share stories, catch up, and have some snacks in the back of the room. For those of you that traveled a great distance to be here, we thank you. Have safe travels, and you're always welcome back here, and I'm sure you're always welcome at LSU. Thank you for coming.